Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Jay Darino, and today we'll be going over how I texture this shoe model in Substance Painter. And shout out to Chris, who has specifically requested this video. Not only will I be going over the texturing, but I'll be going over the different materials, how I got some of these indents using the displacement map in Substance Painter, and everything else. So let's hop into the video. Alright, so before we actually start, so let's go ahead and delete all the textures. Alright, so now that we deleted our textures, go ahead and do a look around, make sure everything is good. So before we actually move on, just a couple hotkeys that I'm using. Alt and middle mouse. You have that. Alt and left click. Alt and right click to zoom in. Just going over that one more time. Middle mouse, holding Alt, right, holding Alt, and left holding Alt. The other short key that I like to use is actually Control Alt and right click. That will select, because if you just try to select it, you can't select anything. And let me tell you something. All right. Let me tell you something. When I first started Substance Painter, that used to get on my nerves, because I'm like, why can't I click anything when it's Control Alt right click? All right, so now that we got the basic controls down, we are ready to start texturing this bad boy. So if you look to your left, you have your materials panel. You have your base materials, and then you actually have your smart materials. The difference between your smart materials and your regular materials, I will show you. Let's do with the bull leather. So with the bull leather, it's not automatically scaled to how you want it. You have to scale it down if you want it a little bit like that. That's with the regular base materials. And over here, you just have your basic material. So your smart material will actually scale down your material to fit your model better. So as you can see, we didn't have to scale this down. It just did it itself. That's why it's called smart material. But that's not the only reason why it's a smart material. So if you actually look over here, this material is made up of three actual things. You have your base color, which you can change. Go to color, you can change that. And also you got some other stuff like surface noise and surface holes, those added details. So now that we have our basic controls down, we know where our material panels are, which is actually free, that comes with Substance Painter. Now that we have everything set, let's go ahead and actually start texturing this sneaker. So the first thing we're going to do is Control Alt right click, and that is going to open up our sole texture. Right here we have our layers panel. This is where everything that you're going to adjust is going to be. You have your add effects, you have your layer mask, you have your add layer, and you have your add fill, and you also have an add preset layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a fill layer. Now if we look at the properties of the fill layer, you can see we have color, height, roughness, metal, normal, OP, and admission. Right now let's just focus on the color, height, roughness, and the normal. So for the color, let's go ahead and make it that pink color that we have in the reference image. So once we have our base material down, we have the color how we want it, we can also affect some other parameters like the shininess of it with the roughness. And to move your light around, hold shift and right click, and you should be able to move your light around to see. So if we go all the way to 1, that is like a matte material, and if we go all the way down to 0, that's like a shiny plastic material. We don't want it that rough, so let's go ahead and make it 0.03. So now that we have our base color down and we dialed in the roughness, let's go ahead and make the tread of the shoe, which we'll be using the height map with. By clicking the height map, you can type what you're looking for. So we're going to be using a fabric diagonal. You might see that once you click it, it is not sized properly. So that is a very quick fix. All we need to do is drag one of the corners, hold down shift, and scale it all the way down till it's something that we like. There we go. You can move it around, you can rotate it. So once you rotated it and scaled it down, you should have a result that looks something like this. Let's go ahead and move on to the midsole. So for the midsole, we're going to use a plastic soft grainy texture. That's going to be in the smart materials. So plastic grainy. Texture soft. Just drag and drop. There you go. Move your light to see it. So in the plastic grainy texture over here, there's a couple things that we need to do. So the first thing we're gonna do is change the color. Now the reason I don't like to jump straight into color is because it's very hard to see the details. So instead of actually going through this process and coloring each and everything, since you guys know the basic way to change the color, I'm just gonna leave everything in black as the default, because with black you can really see the details pop. So let me go ahead and change those to black. And actually I think black looks best on every sneaker. You can really see the details popping. So if you click on a bump, you can actually change the details of your bump. You can invert it, or you can add just a little bit more, but we're gonna keep this nicely simple. We don't want too much. So that looks good right there. So with your white speckles, I'm going to change the color so you can actually see what the white speckles are doing. It's just adding that hint of detail. So now that we have our midsole and our sole, let's go ahead and work on the second midsole. So go ahead and Control Alt right click, and for this we're going to use a fabric synthetic sport, and all we have to do is just change this highlighter color. There we go. I'm telling you, black is undefeated. Now we're gonna make this just a little bit rougher. As you can see, I just been adding textures to this, but if we look at the original sneaker model, you can see that there's all these little indents, all these little details, and we're gonna add that with a displacement map. Go ahead and close down your material. What you want to do is add a fill layer. Now make sure your fill layer is not within the smart material, and then what you want to do is you don't want the color, you don't want the roughness, you don't want the metal, you don't want none of this. All you want is the height, and you want to turn the height all the way down because we want to carve into the model versus extruding the model out. So now that you have that set up, you want to add a black mask. Now while we're adding a black mask, everything that we paint in white is going to carve into the model. So you can either do this with a drawing pad, or you can do it with your mouse. A cool trick that you can use, if you click and hold down shift, you'll get this little dotted lines, and that will make your lines perfect. Not only can you texture on the actual 3D, you can actually texture over here in the 2D, whichever one works easier for you. Beautiful thing about using the mask, all you have to do is hit X for black and just clean it up. Now one cool trick that I'm going to show you, you can add a filter to your mask, and we're actually going to blur this out. So this is with the blur, without the blur, with the blur, without the blur. And let me exaggerate it so you can see. So you can add variations to your details just by adding a blur node. So once you get the blur node intensity dialed in, just find something that you like, and this will hide any imperfections that you have from your painting. So now that we have this little small piece done, I'm going to show you guys how to do the back end, which is extremely easy. It's the same process. You know, to make this even easier, we can actually copy and paste our material into this midsole right here. So go ahead. I'm going to close this, make sure we're out of that, drag that back out. And what you can do is clear mask. So that's the beautiful thing about Substance Painter. You can reuse a lot of techniques and a lot of materials that you've already made. So I'm going to do this with a mouse, but if you want a better result, you can use a drawing tablet. Ooh, okay, come on, let's go. There we go. Do another one just like that. And then we have the back. Ooh, I'm gonna do that with this one. Okay. So this is where the blur node will come in handy. I'm gonna show you guys right now. So click your mask, right click, add filter, blur. Now what seemed very terrible, you can make look amazing just with one simple filter. Now look, it doesn't even look like I did that with a mouse. And the cool thing about the blur, we can actually add it on the bottom of the sole also. Make sure it's only affecting the height. So this is with blur, without blur. See, with the blur node, you start to change the texture dramatically. Shine a little light on it to see how everything looks. All right, moving on to the main part, which is the upper right here. Remember the shortcut, guys. Control alt right click. Material that I use is a fabric bamboo, and it's not a smart material, it's actually a regular material. So the fabric bamboo, all you have to do is drag it and drop it on. It's textured pretty well, but I want to squeeze a little bit more detail out of this, so let me go ahead and drag it down just like that. And we also change the color. Go to base. Let's delete that last material we're using. So with the fabric bamboo texture, you see we have the color, height, roughness, metal, and normal. We don't need the metal, so let's go ahead and click that off. And we want to make this a light blue color. Now a trick, never put your textures on 100% saturation. Always bring it down just a little bit. So now that we changed the colors, if you want to change the height and everything else, go to technical parameters, height range. You can put that up, it'll give you more detail. Go to normal, give you even more detail. And you also have height position. So now to add those extra details that we have in the original texturing, so we see we have these couple lines, and then we also have this white line coming through. So to do that, we're actually gonna steal the material we already made and just copy and paste it, and we're going to clear mask. All right, so you can actually mirror what you're doing. So let's go ahead and reverse this and use the mirroring tool. Now you see, because shoes are asymmetrical, you kind of have to play around with the settings. Go ahead, let's scroll in, let's make those lines. And if you look in the 2D, you can see it's actually doing the same thing on the other side. So if you look at it, there we go. And same process, add a blur filter. For the white stripe, which is simple, we're going to use the add layer. Now with the add layer, is very simple. You can paint all over it. So in order to get that swoopy line, you can do it with a drawing tablet, or you could just freehand it like me. Now if you make a mistake like this, that's fine. We could just go ahead and use the erase tool. Just erase. It's perfect. So for these side pieces, I use a plastic thick crack. So let's go ahead and search that out. Plastic thick crack. Go ahead and drag and drop. Let's change the color. Let's keep it black so we can see the details. And for this upper piece, all I used was a plastic mat. Let's move forward to the Nike check and also the back tab, which were very simple materials. Add a fill. Make sure everything is down, but we need the roughness, and just bring the roughness down. There we go. Now we have that. So bring the roughness all the way down, and now we have that plastic shiny look. Now to add these back details, it's the same process that we use for everything else. We're just gonna copy and paste it and do our little lines. You gotta keep people entertained. All right, so let's go ahead and steal from our upper. Go ahead and copy and paste. So now once we paste that in, same process, you gotta delete the mask, just clear mask, and go ahead and make your design after you copy and pasted it. Then you want to go to the other side. All right, so now once you got the other side complete, you got both sides, make sure they both look good, and make sure you don't have any hiccups like this. Just go ahead and paint that out. So now what you want to do is same process, go ahead and blur those out. Now you got those details right there. So now that you have a basic understanding and basic fundamentals on how to texture this shoe, I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the final result and give a couple more pointers on how I did certain things. So if we jump in the original project file, just a couple tips for you guys when you're actually texturing your shoe. So if we look at the laces, you can see that we have some stitching done, and we also have some holes in it. Now, I'm gonna show you what this will look like if we didn't make these fake holes. So you see how flat this looks, and it does not look realistic at all. But once we add the fake holes, look how more believable this becomes. And the same way we did these lines and the sole to get the height map is the same way that you would do it to get these little indents also. Now let's add back the stitching. Now the stitching just adds another level of realism on it. And with the stitching, all you have to do is, same way we set up the materials for the indents is the same way we have to set it up for the stitching. So let me just go ahead and show you how to do that. So add a fill, close everything. And then you want to bring your height all the way up to 1 and add a mask. Add a black mask. Now going to your material panel, we also have different brushes we can use, alpha mats, textures, and everything. We're going to go to the brush and we're going to type in stitch. Now if you look over here, so we have a stitch brush. Once you just click it, it's so easy to use. There you go. And you also have different parameters that you can use. You can have 2 strands, running strand, double side, and this is what the double side looks like. So once you're done texturing your model, everything looks up to T. You wouldn't want to change anything else. The rest of the texturing is done in Blender just to add that little sauce onto it and render it out. Let me show you that export. What you want to do is go to File, Export Textures. Now make sure everything is selected that you want to export. So if you look to your right, you have your output template, file type, size, packet. Make sure it's at 4K, 8 bits, and everything. So your output templates, what I like to use, or what I've learned to use, is the PBR metallic roughness. And I don't want the emissive, so let's X that out. I don't want the metallic. I just want the high, normal, roughness, and base color. Now for the normal, because of how Blender is set up, you want OpenGL. So just drag and drop that and go to RGB channels. Now, once you drag and drop OpenGL, your normal map should work correctly in Blender. Now, once you do those final tweaks, you want to look at your list of exports, makes everything is good. Once you confirm that all the textures are there that you want, go ahead and hit export. And once you export it, they're going to be where you designated the folder to be. So after you're done exporting, you will import it into Blender and then connect your nodes and everything else and make it spicy. All right, so that is how you texture a sneaker in Substance Painter. I hope you guys learned a lot. Go ahead, if you have any questions, concerns, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. All right, guys, have a blessed year.